The hurricane warning had been blaring for hours, but Olivia Torres barely heard it anymore. Her ambulance cut through the flooded streets of Boston like a knife through dark water. Rain hammered the windshield so hard the wipers could barely keep up. Her partner Ruby had called in sick, leaving Olivia to finish the overnight shift alone with a rookie driver who looked terrified. Station 12. "We're heading back," Olivia spoke into the radio, her voice steady, despite the exhaustion pulling at every muscle. She'd been on duty for 14 hours straight. 3 cardiac arrests, 2 overdoses, and 1 little girl who'd stopped breathing. The little girl had made it. That was all that mattered. The clock on the dashboard glowed to 17 a.m., just 20 minutes, till she could go home to her tiny apartment, feed her cat Pepper, and collapse into bed. She'd earned it. Growing up bouncing between 7 different foster homes had taught her to push through anything. Pain was temporary. Giving up was permanent. Then she saw the headlights. The man who owned Boston, Damien Ashford, was furious, which was nothing new. What was new was that he'd just fired 50 people via video call from the back of his Bentley. They were weak, expendable, and worst of all, they'd questioned his decision to demolish the historic Riverside apartments to build another luxury tower. Sentiment doesn't pay dividends, he told them coldly before ending the call. His driver had taken the night off. Another weakness Damien didn't tolerate. So he drove himself, pushing the Bentley to 80 miles per hour despite the hurricane conditions. Rules were for people who couldn't afford to break them. He could afford anything. The leather steering wheel felt good under his hands. Control, power, these were the only things that mattered. His phone buzzed with another message from his assistant. Damien ignored it. He was untouchable. The bridge approach came up faster than expected. Water had turned the road into a river. Damien didn't slow down. He never slowed down. The Bentley hit the standing water like hitting a wall. The vehicle hydroplaned, spinning completely around. Damien's stomach dropped as he lost all control. The car smashed through the concrete barrier with a sound like the world ending. For one weightless moment, he was flying. Then he was falling. When everything changed, Giz Olivia saw it happen. The expensive car appeared out of nowhere, moving way too fast for the conditions. She watched in horror as it lost control and crashed through the bridge railing. The sound of metal tearing made her heart stop. "Call it in," she screamed at the rookie driver. "Bridge accident, Harbor Bridge, vehicle in the water." She grabbed her trauma kit and jumped out before the ambulance fully stopped. The hurricane wind hit her like a physical force, nearly knocking her small frame backward. Rain soaked through her uniform in seconds. She didn't care. Olivia ran to the broken railing and looked down. The Bentley had landed on a concrete support pillar about 15 feet below the bridge, its front end crushed and hanging partially over the edge. Water from the storm surge was rising fast, without thinking. She tied off a rescue rope to the bridge support and rappelled down. Her training took over. Fear was not an option. Someone was dying down there. "Can you hear me?" Olivia shouted, reaching the wreckage. She could barely hear her own voice over the storm. The driver's window was shattered. A man hung unconscious against his seatbelt, blood covering half his face. He wore a suit that probably cost more than her monthly salary. Didn't matter. Rich or poor, everyone bled the same. Saving a stranger's life, Olivia reached through the broken window, ignoring the glass cutting her arm. She pressed 2 fingers against his neck. The pulse was there but weak and irregular. Bad sign. She needed to work fast. "I'm Olivia. I'm a paramedic," she said loudly, even though he couldn't hear her. Talking kept her focused. "You're going to be okay," she assessed him quickly with trained eyes. Head trauma? Definitely. Possible neck injury. His breathing was shallow and labored. The car was unstable, rocking slightly with each gust of wind. The water was rising. Olivia stabilized his neck using her jacket and a folded emergency blanket. She couldn't move him until backup arrived, but she could keep him alive. Her radio crackled with Ruby's voice. She'd come in despite being sick. "Olivia, fire department is 3 minutes out. Get back up here." "Not without him," Olivia shot back. She applied pressure to the head wound, her small hands steady and sure. The man's eyes suddenly opened. They were gray, like storm clouds, filled with confusion and pain. "Don't move," Olivia commanded. "You've been in an accident. Your neck might be injured." Tried to speak. Only a groan came out. "Save your energy," Olivia continued, checking his pupils with her penlight. "Help is coming. I need you to stay still and stay with me." His eyes focused on her face. Even in his condition, there was something sharp in his gaze. Something that tried to assess, to control, to command. "Don't." "Take orders," he managed to whisper. Despite everything, Olivia almost laughed. "Tonight you do, buddy. Unless you want to drown. Your choice." The car shifted. Metal groaned. The water was at the door level now, racing against time sirens cut through the storm. Red and blue lights painted the dark water below the bridge. The fire department arrived with their heavy rescue equipment. Ruby appeared at the top of the railing, lowering additional medical supplies. "Vitals?" Ruby shouted down. "Pulse weak, breathing compromised, significant head trauma." Olivia called back. She never took her eyes off the patient. "I need a collar and backboard now." The rescue happened in organized chaos. Firefighters rappelled down, secured the car, and carefully extracted the man while Olivia maintained neck stabilization. Every movement had to be precise. One wrong shift could paralyze him. As they lifted him onto the rescue basket, his hand suddenly grabbed Olivia's wrist. His grip was surprisingly strong for someone who'd just cheated death. "Are you?" he asked, his voice barely audible. "Just someone doing her job," Olivia replied. "Now let go. We need to get you to the hospital." But his eyes held hers for a moment longer. There was something in that look that made her uncomfortable. Not fear or gratitude, but something else. Recognition, maybe, or challenge. Then he passed out. They hauled him up to safety. The aftermath. 2 hours later, Olivia sat in the ambulance bay at Boston Memorial, finishing her report. Her hands shook slightly from adrenaline crash. The patient had been rushed into surgery. The doctors said she'd saved his life. The police said he'd been going nearly 90 miles per hour in hurricane conditions. "Idiot," Olivia muttered, signing off on the paperwork. Ruby appeared with 2 cups of terrible hospital coffee. "I heard who that was. Damien Ashford. The real estate guy. Owns half of Boston." Olivia shrugged. "Never heard of him, seriously? He's like a billionaire or something. There's going to be news crews all over this. Good for him." Olivia stood up, every muscle screaming. "I'm going home. I have a cat to feed and about 12 hours of sleep to catch up on." She had no idea that in 3 days, the man she'd saved would walk back into her life and turn everything upside down. She had no idea that Damien Ashford never forgot a face, especially not the face of a tiny paramedic who'd looked at him like he was just another patient instead of a king. The storm was over. But the real turbulence was just beginning. "I'm Olivia. I'm a paramedic," she said loudly, even though he couldn't hear her. Talking kept her focused. "You're going to be okay." She assessed him quickly with trained eyes. Head trauma, definitely. Possible neck injury. His breathing was shallow and labored. The car was unstable, rocking slightly with each gust of wind. The water was rising. Olivia stabilized his neck, using her jacket and a folded emergency blanket. She couldn't move him until backup arrived, but she could keep him alive. Her radio crackled with Ruby's voice. She'd come in despite being sick. "Olivia, fire department is 3 minutes out. Get back up here." "Not without him," Olivia shot back. She applied pressure to the head wound, her small hands steady and sure. The man's eyes suddenly opened. They were gray, like storm clouds, filled with confusion and pain. "Don't move," Olivia commanded. "You've been in an accident. Your neck might be injured." He tried to speak. Only a groan came out. "Save your energy," Olivia continued, checking his pupils with her penlight. "Help is coming. I need you to stay still and stay with me." His eyes focused on her face. Even in his condition, there was something sharp in his gaze. Something that tried to assess, to control, to command. "Take orders," he managed to whisper. Despite everything, Olivia almost laughed. "Tonight you do, buddy. Unless you want to drown. Your choice." The car shifted. Metal groaned. The water was at the door level now, racing against time sirens cut through the storm. Red and blue lights painted the dark water below the bridge. The fire department arrived with their heavy rescue equipment. Ruby appeared at the top of the railing, lowering additional medical supplies, vitals. Ruby shouted down, "Pulse weak, breathing compromised, significant head trauma." Olivia called back. She never took her eyes off the patient. "I need a collar and backboard now." The rescue happened in organized chaos. Firefighters rappelled down, secured the car, and carefully extracted the man, while Olivia maintained neck stabilization. Every movement had to be precise. One wrong shift could paralyze him. As they lifted him onto the rescue basket, his hand suddenly grabbed Olivia's wrist. His grip was surprisingly strong for someone who just cheated death. "Are you?" he asked, his voice barely audible. "Just someone doing her job," Olivia replied. "Now let go. We need to get you to the hospital." But his eyes held hers for a moment longer. There was something in that look that made her uncomfortable. Not fear or gratitude, but something else. Recognition, maybe, or challenge. Then he passed out, and they hauled him up to safety. The aftermath, 2 hours later, Olivia sat in the ambulance bay at Boston Memorial, finishing her report. Her hands shook slightly from adrenaline crash. The patient had been rushed into surgery. The doctors said she'd saved his life. The police said he'd been going nearly 90 miles per hour in hurricane conditions. "Idiot," Olivia muttered, signing off on the paperwork. Ruby appeared with 2 cups of terrible hospital coffee. "I heard who that was. Damien Ashford. The real estate guy. Owns half of Boston." Olivia shrugged. "Never heard of him? Seriously? He's like a billionaire or something. There's going to be news crews all over this. Good for him." Olivia stood up, every muscle screaming. "I'm going home. I have a cat to feed and about 12 hours of sleep to catch up on." She had no idea that in 3 days the man she'd saved would walk back into her life and turn everything upside down. She had no idea that Damien Ashford never forgot a face, especially not the face of a tiny paramedic who'd looked at him like he was just another patient, instead of a king. The storm was over. But the real turbulence was just beginning. Part 2. The hospital confrontation. The kings meet their match. Damien woke up 3 days later in a hospital room that looked nothing like a hospital room. Private suite on the top floor of Boston Memorial. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city he owned. Custom furniture. Art on the walls. His assistant had made sure of it. His head pounded like someone was hitting it with a hammer. The bandages felt tight across his forehead. But Damien Ashford didn't do weakness. He sat up despite the wave of dizziness and reached for his phone. 73. Missed calls. Good. The world hadn't forgotten him. A nurse entered, looking nervous. "Mr. Ashford, you shouldn't be sitting up yet." "Get me Dr. Harrison," Damien said, his voice rough but commanding. "And bring me real coffee, not that hospital garbage." "Dr. Harrison isn't your attending physician, sir. And you're on restricted diet? Do you know who I am?" The nurse paled. "Yes, sir." "Then you know I don't follow restrictions." "Get Harrison now." Within minutes, the hospital administrator himself appeared, along with the chief of surgery. They assured Damien that he was receiving the absolute best care. They asked how they could make him more comfortable. They practically bowed. This was normal. This was how the world worked. Then she walked in. The woman who wouldn't. Bow Olivia had hoped to avoid the VIP floor entirely. She worked emergency medicine, not private care for rich people who thought rules didn't apply to them. But her supervisor had specifically requested she check on the bridge accident patient before her shift started. "He's asking for you," her supervisor had said. "Apparently you saved him." "I was doing my job," Olivia replied. But she went anyway. She knocked once on the suite door and entered without waiting for an answer. The room looked like a fancy hotel. The man from the bridge sat propped up in bed, wearing silk pajamas that probably cost more than her car. His gray eyes locked onto her immediately. "You," he said, like he'd been waiting. Me, Olivia confirmed. "How are you feeling?" "Like I was in a car accident." He studied her with unsettling intensity. You're smaller than I remember. You're unconscious and bleeding. Everything probably looked different. Olivia checked his chart on the tablet. Your scans look good. No permanent damage. You got lucky. Luck had nothing to do with it. You saved my life. You're welcome. Now follow your discharge instructions and don't drive like a maniac. She turned to leave. Wait. What? Something in his voice made her pause, but she didn't like it. Olivia turned back slowly. Damien smiled, the kind of smile that probably got him everything he wanted. I'd like to properly thank you. My assistant has arranged a small token of appreciation. A new apartment in the Harbor Tower building. 3 bedrooms, waterfront view. The building won't be finished for another year, but you'll have first pick. The explosion in the room went very quiet. Olivia walked back to his bedside slowly. Despite being barely over 5 feet tall, she suddenly seemed to fill the entire space. Mr. Ashford, she said, her voice dangerously calm. I'm going to explain something to you very clearly. I did not pull you out of that car so you could buy me an apartment. I did it because saving lives is what I do. It's not a business transaction. Damien blinked, genuinely confused. I'm trying to be generous. No, you're trying to turn compassion into commerce. Olivia crossed her arms. You think everything has a price tag? Well, I don't. Keep your apartment. Better yet, give it to someone who actually needs it instead of someone who saved your life doing their job. I don't understand, of course you don't. Olivia leaned forward slightly. You're used to buying your way through life. Buying loyalty, buying silence, buying gratitude. But you can't buy me, Mr. Ashford. And you can't buy out of the fact that you nearly killed yourself driving like the rules don't apply to you. Damien stared at her. No one spoke to him like this. Ever. Anger flashed through him, then something else. Something unfamiliar. Everyone has a price, he said quietly. Truth hits hard. That's the saddest thing I've ever heard. Olivia's expression softened slightly, but not her stance. You really believe that, don't you? That's why you're alone in this fancy room with no visitors. That's why the only people who came to see you were employees who have to be here. The words hit harder than the car accident. Damien felt something crack inside him. You don't know anything about me, he said, but his voice lacked its usual edge. I know you were going 90 miles per hour in a hurricane. I know you fired 50 people the night you crashed. I know the hospital staff is terrified of you. And I know that when you woke up after nearly dying, your first instinct was to buy someone's kindness. Olivia shook her head. That's not living, Mr. Ashford. That's just existing behind a wall of money. She walked to the door, then paused. You've been given a second chance. Most people don't get that. Maybe think about what you want to do with it. Then she was gone. Damien sat in his expensive hospital suite staring at the closed door. His head throbbed. His pride hurt worse. And for the first time in 20 years, he felt completely, utterly lost. The research begins. That evening, after the doctors finally left him alone, Damien made a call. Timothy, I need a complete file on Olivia Torres. The paramedic, everything. His private investigator was efficient. By morning, Damien had a full dossier. Olivia Torres, 27 years old. Born to a teenage mother who died of an overdose when Olivia was 2. Grew up in the foster care system, 7 different homes. Worked 3 jobs to put herself through community college, then paramedic training. Top of her class. 8 years with Boston Emergency Services. Lived in a modest studio apartment in Southie. No family, no trust fund. No shortcuts, just determination. Damien read through the file 3 times. She'd built everything from nothing. Everything he'd inherited from his grandfather, she'd earned. Every advantage he'd been born with, she'd lacked. And she'd still become someone who saved lives instead of buying them. The gift that backfired. 2 days after his discharge, Damien had his assistant deliver a gift to Olivia's apartment. Not the apartment he'd offered, something else. Something he thought showed he'd listened. It was a donation receipt. He'd donated $500,000 to the Boston Foster Care Alliance in her name. Surely, she couldn't be angry about that. He was very wrong, Olivia. Showed up at his office building the next morning at 7 a.m. His receptionist tried to stop her. His security tried to intercept her. She walked past all of them like they were invisible and burst into his penthouse office where Damien was reading the financial reports. "What did you do?" She threw the receipt on his desk. Damien stood, caught off guard. "I made a donation. To a cause you obviously care about." "I thought you thought wrong." Olivia's eyes blazed. "You don't get to use my name for your tax write-off. You don't get to use my story as your PR move. That's not what this is. Then what is it?" She stepped closer. "Because from where I'm standing, this looks like another attempt to buy your way into feeling like a good person. You think money fixes everything, but it doesn't fix you." The words hung in the air like smoke. Damien felt something break inside him. Not anger this time. Something deeper. "You're right," he said quietly. Olivia stopped mid-rant. "What?" "You're right about all of it." Damien sat down slowly, suddenly looking older than his 34 years. "I don't know how to do this. Any of this. Connecting with people, being genuine, being anything other than what I've always been." The anger drained from Olivia's face, replaced by something like pity, and that hurt worse than her fury. "Mr. Ashford, my father was a construction worker," Damien said suddenly. "Gregory Ashford. He built luxury buildings his entire life but couldn't afford to live in them. When my grandfather died and left me everything, my father was proud. He said I could do what he never could. But I don't think this is what he meant." Olivia listened, silent now. "I haven't visited him in 3 years," Damien continued. "He lives in a nursing home in Quincy. Not a fancy one. Just a regular place. I pay the bills, but I don't visit." "Why not?" "Because he looks at me the way you do." Damien met her eyes. "Like I'm not the person I could be." The honesty in his voice surprised them both. Olivia pulled up a chair and sat down across from him, her anger gone. "Then change. You've been given a second chance. Stop trying to buy your way into being better and actually be better. I don't know how. Start by visiting your father." Damien Ashford stood outside Quincy Meadows' care facility for 20 minutes before he could make himself go inside. His Bentley sat in the parking lot like a spaceship among the regular cars. He felt ridiculous. He felt exposed. He felt scared. When was the last time he'd felt scared? The facility was clean but modest. Floral wallpaper, fluorescent lights, the smell of disinfectant and cafeteria food. Nothing like the luxury Damien surrounded himself with. His father lived here because this was what Damien had chosen when he'd been too busy to think about it. "Room 247. He knocked. Softly, "It's open," came a gravelly voice. Gregory Ashford sat in a wheelchair by the window, looking out at the parking lot. He was 73 now, his hands gnarled with arthritis from 50 years of construction work. When he turned and saw Damien, his expression didn't change. "Well," Gregory said, "look who remembered I exist." Facing the mirror, Dad. Damien's voice cracked. He hadn't expected that. "Damien." His father wheeled himself around fully. "What brings you here? Need me to sign something? Another business deal using the Ashford name?" The bitterness in his father's voice was like acid. Damien deserved every drop. "I came to see you," Damien said simply. He sat down in the visitor's chair, feeling like a child again. 3 years later, Gregory studied his son. "You look terrible. That bandage on your head. What happened?" "Car accident. About a week ago?" "Bad. Bad enough." Damien met his father's eyes. "I almost died, Dad." Gregory's expression softened slightly. "But you didn't." "No. A paramedic saved me. A woman who told me I was wasting my life." Damien laughed without humor. She was right. For a long moment his father said nothing. Then Gregory wheeled closer. "Tell me about her." So Damien did. He told his father about Olivia. About the bridge, the crash, the hospital confrontation. About growing up in foster care and working 3 jobs and saving lives because it was the right thing to do. About how she'd looked at him like he was both disappointing and capable of more. "She sounds smart," Gregory said, when Damien finished. "She sees through your nonsense. She hates me." "Good, you've earned it." His father's blunt words stung. Son, I worked my whole life building homes for rich people. I was proud of that work. Honest work. But you've built your fortune by tearing down neighborhoods and pushing out families who can't afford your prices. The truth comes out. I'm a businessman, Damien said defensively. I provide luxury housing for who? Gregory interrupted. Not for regular people. Not for nurses and teachers and paramedics who save lives. You build towers that sit empty because only millionaires can afford them. That's not building, son. That's hoarding. The words hit like physical blows. Damien wanted to argue, but he couldn't, because his father was right. I don't know how to fix this, Damien admitted. I don't know how to be different, then learn. Gregory reached out and gripped his son's hand with surprising strength. You're my boy. You're smart enough to figure it out. But first you have to want to. I do want to. Why? Because some pretty paramedic made you feel bad. His father shook his head. That's not enough. You have to want it for you. Not to impress her. Not to feel better. But because it's right. Damien sat with those words for a long time. The plan takes shape over the next 2 weeks. Damien did something he'd never done before. He stopped. He didn't make deals. He didn't check his portfolio. He didn't fire anyone. Instead, he visited his father every single day. They talked. Really talked. About Gregory's life in construction. About the neighborhoods that used to exist before luxury developments. About the families displaced. About what it meant to build something that mattered. The Riverside Apartments, Damien said one afternoon. The historic building I was going to demolish. What if I didn't? Gregory looked up from his lunch. What? What if instead of tearing it down to build a luxury tower, I renovated it? Kept it affordable. Made it beautiful, but accessible. The idea was forming as he spoke. I could create a model. Prove that profit and people don't have to be enemies. You'd lose money, his father pointed out. I have enough money. Damien leaned forward. Maybe it's time I built something worth more than my bank account. His father smiled. It was the first real smile Damien had seen in years. Now, you're thinking like a builder. The grand gesture that failed Damien threw himself into the project with the same intensity he'd once used to destroy neighborhoods. He hired architects who specialized in historic preservation. He consulted with community leaders. He created a plan for affordable housing that was actually affordable. It's not just luxury units with a few token middle-income apartments. Then he tried to show Olivia. He sent her the plans. She didn't respond. He invited her to a presentation. She declined. He left messages at the fire station. She ignored them. Finally, in frustration, showed up at Boston Memorial at shift change with a full presentation board. Olivia walked past him without stopping. No, you haven't even looked at it, Damien protested, following her. Don't need to. She kept walking. Whatever it is, it's about you trying to prove something to me. I'm not interested. This isn't about you. Damien's voice echoed in the hallway. Several nurses turned to stare. Olivia stopped and turned slowly. Then why are you showing me? Because ... Damien faltered. Because you made me see myself clearly for the first time. And I wanted you to know I'm trying to change. A change for you or for me? I don't know anymore. The moment of truth, Olivia looked at him for a long moment. Then she sighed. Come with me. She led him to the hospital cafeteria, poured 2 terrible cups of coffee, and sat down at a corner table. Damien sat across from her, feeling more nervous than he'd ever been in a boardroom. Mr. Ashford, Damien. Please. Damien. Olivia wrapped her hands around her coffee cup. I appreciate that you're trying. I really do. But you need to understand something. I'm not your redemption arc. I'm not the prize you win for becoming a better person. I'm just a paramedic who does her job, I know that. Do you? She leaned forward. Because it seems like you've spent the last 2 weeks trying to prove yourself to me. That's not growth. That's just another form of transaction. The words stung because they were true. What should I do? Damien asked quietly. Stop trying to impress me. Stop trying to win me over. Just be better because it's right. Olivia's voice softened. If you're really changing, do it for yourself. For your father, for the community. Not for the tiny paramedic who called you out. Damien sat back, feeling something click into place. You're right, I know, you're always right, aren't you? Olivia smiled slightly. Usually, 6 months later, Damien didn't try to contact Olivia after that conversation. He focused on the Riverside project. The renovation took 6 months and cost him more money than he'd ever spent on a single project. But when it was finished, it was beautiful. 56 affordable apartments in a restored historic building. Community spaces on the ground floor. A rooftop garden. Monthly rent based on income, not on profit margins. It wasn't going to make him richer. It made him feel wealthy in a way money never had. The grand opening was small and local. No news crews. No celebrities. Just community members and families who would actually live there. Damien's father was there in his wheelchair, tears in his eyes. You did it, son, Gregory said. You built something that matters. Damien was about to respond when he saw her at the edge of the crowd. Olivia Torres, in jeans and a sweater, holding a cup of coffee. She raised it slightly in acknowledgement. His heart jumped. After the ceremony ended and the crowds dispersed, Damien found her sitting on a bench outside the building. You came, he said, trying to sound casual and failing. I heard about the project, Olivia replied. Wanted to see if it was real. And it's real. She looked up at him. You actually did it. The beginning of something real. Damien sat down next to her, leaving a respectful distance between them. I didn't do it for you, I know. I did it because it was right. Because my father was right. Because you were right. He stared at the building. I wasted a lot of years building the wrong things.
Oh.
But you're building the right things now.
Oh.
Olivia turned to look at him. That counts for something. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment. I visit my father twice a week now, Damien said. We play chess. He beats me every time. Good for him. I'm funding a program at Boston Medical School. Full scholarships for students from the foster care system who want to go into emergency medicine. Olivia's eyes widened. You are. Don't use it as a PR move. No press releases. Just doing it because kids who grow up like you did deserve every chance.
Hell yeah.
Damien met her eyes. Is that okay? It's more than okay. Olivia's voice was soft. It's actually perfect. I'm also a terrible driver now, Damien admitted. I go exactly the speed limit. It's embarrassing. Olivia laughed. Actually laughed. The sound was amazing. Good, stay embarrassed. Stay alive, I'm trying. Damien hesitated. Olivia, I'm not asking for anything. I just want you to know that you changed my life. That night on the bridge, you didn't just save my life. You showed me what a life worth saving actually looks like. Olivia was quiet for a long time. Then she stood up, and Damien's heart sank. But instead of walking away, she held out her hand. I'm getting coffee, she said. The real stuff, not hospital garbage. Want to come? Damien stood slowly, not quite believing what was happening. Yes, just coffee, Olivia warned. Not a date, not a transaction. Just two people having coffee. Just coffee, Damien agreed. They walked down the street together, the tiny paramedic and the humbled billionaire. Behind them, the Riverside apartments stood as proof that people could change, that second chances were real, that sometimes the smallest person in the room had the biggest impact, and sometimes, just sometimes, arrogance could meet compassion and transform into something better, something real.